What I've gained as an academic as a result of the ongoing pandemic and my ability to pivot under these circumstances is, I guess, the knowledge that I actually am more versatile, adaptive, persistent, persevering, and patient than I ever thought I was. People tell me that I am, but I never really, I guess, believed it until this time in my life. And I plan to use that knowledge to help me to kind of remember during my trying times when I'm struggling the most that, I do have these character traits and I can use those to help me later on. And not, for whatever's in store for me, I can handle it.
When considering a reopening plan during a pandemic, it is important to have a strong team of committed individuals who look at every scenario. Um, they make decisions in the best interest of the staff, all of the students, and community members, but are also open to making adjustments on the way because they listen to those people. So being on the same page collectively is extremely important in these times. A takeaway that I have fully been appreciative about is how resilient everybody has been. Staff, students, new teaching, learning platforms have been really beneficial to us, and I hope to see more of this change in the future.
As a result of the pandemic, as an academic, I have gained several skills. Some skills include learning new uses of technology, as well as how to connect with my students virtually. Moving forward, I intend to always offer virtual meetings to students and families. I would like to have my class of children before the start of the year virtually gather as we've done during NTI to get to know each other, become familiar with faces and our space prior to entering the school building. I also intend to, in regards to conferences, offer virtual meetings for parents so that they can feel more comfortable if they don't want to come in, or if timing or being at work becomes a barrier. Hopefully, a virtual meeting will always take away that obstacle and give us the opportunity to meet. And I've learned so many things in regards to technology and how to use Google Classroom and different tools such as Jamboard and Screencastify that we're using here to teach and connect with children. Thanks so much.
As a result of the pandemic, I have became comfortable with being uncomfortable. And being uncomfortable and being outside of my comfort zone doesn't impact me the way that it used to. It used to give me a great deal of anxiety to not know what was going to happen next. But finding comfort in the uncomfortable has encouraged me to take risks with my creativity in the classroom. And it's also encouraged me to take risks professionally and personally. And so I truly believe that the magic happens outside of your comfort zone. And this pandemic has moved me out of my comfort zone, and it has allowed me to be okay with being uncomfortable.
One of the biggest things I've learned through this pandemic is how important those relationships are with your students and being transparent with them. I've had many talks throughout this year with different kids and what they're struggling with, and sharing those times that I have struggled too, whether it's missing family and missing people, or losing people, or all the issues that are going on around us, and how isolating it can feel when you're stuck inside your four walls of your house. But we can grow together through this, and we can be there for one another. And I'm not just their teacher. I've met many of my kids' siblings, their pets, their parents, etc. And I've been inside many of their homes. I've also let them know my daughter and allowed them inside of my home, my office, my daughter's playroom, and pretty much wherever else I might be teaching that day. Another takeaway for me is how beneficial Google Classroom was, and the benefits of time management. I think about using this as a skill for future to focus on with my kids. I also plan on putting more emphasis next year on knowing more about my kids and their personal lives, as well as their hopes and dreams. And I also want to incorporate more life skills through Google Classroom and making those connections to our backpacks as well.
Over this past year as an academic, I've learned a lot about my ability to pivot to kind of evolve um, as a academic and as a leader. More specifically about how to tell a story of racial injustices and marginalization that goes on within our schools that I'd already seen as a lived experience as a teacher and as a student of color when I was younger. So those things were easy, but the thing is now is to be able to tell that story and then have ears that will listen. That's the most impactful kind of change that's been over the past year. And then as far as um, what I plan to do with this newfound knowledge is to continue to peel back the layers that we've seen uncover over this past year, but continue to peel back those layers, but also to in efforts to build capacity of others, so that way that we can have more accomplices, if you will, that will help continue to push this and to better our students across our district, more specifically our students of color.
So, what have I learned? Um, I've learned that just how important it is and critical it is in establishing a culture of learning, improvement, and collaboration. And before we can do any kind of substantial work around student outcomes and teacher practice, creating that culture and buy-in among folks, that learning and improvement, it's what we do. We are constantly in a cycle of improvement and we do it together. We collaborate. That's, is truly the baseline and what's most important. Moving forward, I think it's really important that we continue to dedicate blocks of time. I mean, that's something that COVID has definitely taught me, is how much that time is really valuable for teachers to be able to collaborate with one another and to be intentional with that. How important it is for the instructional leadership team to collaborate as well in that process, and focusing on that weekly professional learning time, possibly in addition to PLCs or as a component of the PLC process, for that cross grade level dialogue, and just really discussion and protocols around that. And really just this has given us an opportunity to deeply understand what we look at to improve our practice. And I think that that's really important.
So, what I learned during this time was that it's important to be flexible, and it's okay to understand that you can't reach everybody. I learned how to counsel differently, whereas at first I was used to seeing kids face to face. I was used to them reaching out. And then it became a situation of everything turned and it changed. And kids weren't as open to talk. They didn't want to Zoom or Google Meet or anything like that. And so I had to learn to adapt to them to be able to service their needs. So I had to become more flexible. And so that was one of the biggest things that challenged me, but I also learned to be a little bit more appreciative, and just learn how to meet my students where they are and still be able to provide whatever services it is that they need.
As an educator, during the pandemic, I have gained a new appreciation for giving myself grace. I've also learned the importance of really being resourceful, resilient, flexible, and adaptable. These things have been staples in surviving and rising to the occasion and succeeding during this last year or so. Something that I plan to take with me moving forward is really grace. Grace and allowing myself to know that it's okay if I don't finish it as fast as I typically would, or if I wait or don't get it done at all, to really prioritize what really needs to be done. A couple of things that I will keep in mind is a good work-life balance and boundaries. When to kind of just put it down and do something else or walk away from it, even if it didn't get done.
As a result of the ongoing pandemic, I have gained increased digital agility. I'm almost entirely paperless after spending a year only working on a computer. Before the pandemic, I tried to be mostly digital, but I still needed paper to be a physical reminder of things that needed to be addressed or questions that needed to be answered. Now I have developed systems to keep me on track and not lose important information or to-do items in the cloud. Overall, I feel more efficient and I don't have to worry about not having a paper or notebook with me when I'm at the office or traveling to schools, since all of my information is digital. I also completed my level 1 Google certification and started a Google site to organize important information for my principals and other school leaders. The site streamlines information for them and for me. This is a request that they had during the pandemic because they were getting memos and documents from email, district pages, or Google Classrooms, and from meetings, and they wanted a way to have it all organized. All in all, I've become more comfortable conducting the vast majority of my work on my computer or device. However, there's nothing that takes the place of being in schools, seeing my leaders face to face, and engaging in normal human interactions like small talk that just doesn't happen on a formal Zoom meeting or a Google Meet. The pivot to increased digital reliance was necessary and will help me be more efficient and supportive of my principals in the future, but I will use it just as a tool, not as a way of being.
So for the first part of the question, what I've learned from the pandemic and just having to completely pivot as an educator, one of the biggest things, and I feel like this has been the theme, is improved relationships with parents and also the teachers. And I feel like the theme of this has just been flexibility, and not only flexibility from the educator side of things, but also flexibility from the parent side. The parents having understanding and being flexible with teachers, as well as teachers and us being flexible with parents and their schedule and their time constraints, as well as the improved access to technology, and that materials are now accessible in a different platform, and that we as educators, we can still provide not necessarily the same instruction, but analogous instruction in a virtual world. And so with that, moving forward, just to continue building on improving relationships with parents, and also improving on just being an educator and how we provide instruction to kids, and in my world at least, special education services as well.